Brian, welcome to Locked In. You made it through a snowstorm.
I did.
From Maryland, right?
Yes, originally.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get any snow today. We got a little bit. But.
Yeah, I was following it, and ultimately it was hitting us first, and it made its way up here.
Yeah, it wasn't even on the forecast that it was going to snow here.
No, and honestly, it missed New York.
Ah.
So you had your own little thing up here.
Have you been to Connecticut before?
I have not. New York plenty of times, but Connecticut not.
First time in Connecticut. Wow.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we're like a lonely state out here. No one really comes here or knows what it's even for out here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following some other stuff on Danbury, but all in all, I mean, it's always been. What is it? Greenwich has always been a great place to live right outside New York.
Have you watched the Danbury Trashers documentary?
No, what is that?
That's about AJ Galante and his dad, who bought him a hockey team when he was a teenager.
Okay.
And he ended up going to prison for mob-related stuff.
Got it.
It's a big story to come out of Danbury.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, it's right now. I just like the overall feel of it.
And they have a federal prison in Danbury too.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, I was there for a few months. How do you like the Woo energy drink?
It's good. I mean, I've been driving for 7 hours, so I need a little bit of a wake up. So it's doing the job.
So did you grow up in Maryland?
Yeah. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm back there now. I lived in Los Angeles for 22 years. So I moved back I live in two states right now. I live half the year in Florida, half the year in Maryland.
Ah, big difference.
Well, what LA, Florida, or Maryland? Which one?
Well, just LA and Florida weather-wise compared to Baltimore.
Yeah. Right now, I'm happy where we're at right now. We got hit pretty hard in Florida with that Hurricane Helene. Mm-hmm. So our family's got a bunch of properties down there. 2 of our properties got destroyed. There's an island there called Treasure Island, and that island got decimated. So it's going to take 8 months for it to get back on track. So I'm happy where I'm at in Maryland in the meantime. Until that island gets back on track.
Who did you grow up with?
Who did I grow up with?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Like parents, both parents, siblings.
Yeah, so we grew up poor initially. Like we all, it was just like me, my mom, my grandma, my dad, my uncle, all in one small house in this little community called Towson. But my parents were super focused in academics. So as they were pulling themselves through, they were going to school. They went to law school in Baltimore. And then gradually, I kind of felt more comfortable in the poorer communities, to tell you the truth. People are a little bit more down to earth. And as we grew, we would move into bigger homes when I got older. And then, I had a sister. She, was 8 years old, and we grew up. And by the time I was getting into senior year in college, she got really sick. And we could get into that later because of probably a lot of the things that happened with her. Has a lot to do with my story.
What do your parents do for work?
Well, they started out as lawyers, and they still are. My mom is still a practicing attorney. My dad's an attorney and real estate investor. They are no longer together. When my sister did pass away in college from cancer, he moved on. And then my mom, she was like very interesting because very, very firm, very intelligent, a full academic. She's attractive in that like people liked her on TV. So they even did a TV show with her. She had what it takes to be a newscaster. So they did a beta test, I think, or maybe a pilot, what they would call that, with Oprah, because Oprah used to live in Baltimore. And she didn't like it. She's like, I'm trying this out. She did a couple movies, but she's like, just not me. I'm more into the law thing. And then before you know it, she was really well respected in the community of Baltimore, and they gave her a position as a judge. And it's called a master of the court. It allows you to be a judge and a lawyer at the same time. And she and my dad, when they were still together, they bought a building across the street from the courthouse of Baltimore. So she was able to have her cases there at the building. So it just kind of made sense, this whole arrangement she had as both a judge and a lawyer at the same time.
What kind of attorney was she and your father?
Okay, so my dad did all kinds of like personal injury type cases. My mom, but he was the business and brains behind the firm. So he's the one who's like, let's buy this building. My mom would have never done that on her own. my dad was the guy that goes, hey, let's build this into a business. So my mom was like, let me put my face in the media. So when she started out in the media, she became friends with everybody in the media. So she was always, our cases were always featured in the media, and she would get bigger and bigger, more high profile cases. So she did everything from, she always had a huge case against the Archdiocese, breast implant cases. She would always be suing Johns Hopkins University for medical malpractice. She did huge sexual abuse cases, that kind of hit the media a lot. She had, and that was part of my training. When I was a kid, I didn't have what you would call a loving family. They were very stern. They're loving in their own way. They're like, we're going to get you in the best schools we can. Okay. That was the way they did it. My mom's like, hi, son. That's just not my mom. I would go, she's not a soccer mom. She doesn't talk with the other moms. She's all business. So as a result of that, they take me to the law firm with them, so I was raised in a law firm in many ways. And you're taught a lot about certain things in life when you're a 12-year-old working at a law firm. One of them, which we could get into later, but it has to do with the art of silence. Just keeping your mouth shut about these cases. So like I remember when my mom had a high profile case and I was watching wrestling as a kid. I go, that's Lex Luger. He's walked in. Okay. So he walks in with this beautiful girl, and the woman's one of my mom's clients. So, and there's another guy there. So the woman's beautiful. She's a breast implant case. Okay. They leave. That weekend comes up. I'm at a party. I love to go to, gatherings while I was in high school. So I'm a high school kid, about 14 years old. And I see a guy that was with Lex Luger. I'm like, hey, you're at my mom's law firm. So he just starts hitting it up, having a normal whatever conversation. Don't know anything about the case. And it just got back to the woman at Lex Luger that I was talking about the case. I got immediately scolded the next day. I see my mom. She's like, what are you doing talking about cases? Keep your mouth shut. Everything we do here is secret. So it was a really firm learning experience about about silence and respecting that.
Do you think there was a lot of pressure put on you as a kid because of their occupation in that environment?
Let me explain even bigger. Okay. I used to get attacked because of my mom's cases. Meaning I remember being at a gathering and a woman staring at me, or a young girl, we're in high school at this point, and all of a sudden she's throwing a drink at me. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Your mom, sued my uncle, and he was a priest at a high school called Calvert Hall. And I'm like, I don't know anything about it. Because one thing my mom is good on, she doesn't discuss her cases with her family. She would probably talk with her husband because he's a lawyer, but I don't know anything about this stuff. So the pressure was that, she sued a lot of people in the community, and Baltimore at that point was what we call Smaltimore, meaning everybody knows each other. So you're suing somebody, people know about it at that point, and it got very close to home, even suing my former principal. I swear to God, yeah.
Over what?
She was a nun, and she was a nun at a school. She's absolute Catholic. So you have a Catholic suing the Catholic Archdiocese. She still settles cases with the Archdiocese today. I swear to God. And she was overseeing a teacher at like a middle school that was molesting kids. I mean, these are pretty ugly cases that she gets involved in. And she's like, she was complicit. She allowed this to happen under her watch. And it was a school that she was with before she was my principal. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that she would do. And she didn't care it was my principal. She's still going to do a case like that. It is what it is.
So did she have to recuse herself as a judge a lot? Because
because the type of judge she would listen to uncontested cases, divorce cases. So it's not really a true full-on judge, but she did have what's called a judgeship. And the judges and her had their own group. Like they had this place in Little Italy. They used to have judges dinners together. And a lot of her mentors were judges, and her best friends turned out to be judges that she went to law school with at the University of Baltimore.
Was your sister treated the same way too before she got sick?
What do you mean? Oh, no, she
With
was
the
too
pressure?
young for it.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't start getting the bulk of these until, but they lasted because she's a firm, no nonsense attorney. So she's got a lot of haters in Baltimore. So I'd be guilty by association. I could arrest someone. You're like, you're Joanne's son. I'm like, yeah. It's like, what is it? Like, what do you want to do?
Did you ever get into any trouble or anything in high school at all?
I should have gotten in trouble in high school. I because my mom didn't play out well with others in a certain way, she was isolating me in many ways. So, and like I said, like when I was younger, we grew up poor, and all of a sudden we lived in this big mansion, and I was like, this is a really boring neighborhood, honestly. It's a big house. Kids don't play out in the neighborhood like they did at my other neighborhood. So I was an ADHD kid, and I just did things differently. Like I liked sports, but I was more of a martial artist. You wouldn't find one martial artist in my private school. And in my area is a place called Guilford and Homeland. These are two homes that we lived in, and they're beautiful homes. But next door, if you just take the bike a little bit further, you go into the hood. And initially, I used to ride my bike there and be the only white kid. And initially, the kids wanted to kill me. And then ultimately, they just said, this is just an innocent white guy coming in. And over time, they warmed up to me. And I'm like, I feel a little bit more comfortable over with you guys than my neighborhood. So I would develop friendships in neighborhoods outside of mine.
Mm. What were your aspirations after high school? Did you want to go to college? What did that look like?
So, I had certain characteristics in high school that were different than others. So I was always kind of like I always like going, okay, I can understand learning high school or learning the principles of English and math, but I ultimately always wanted to kind of work already, So I'd always I'd be the one shoveling snow to make some money. Even though my family had money, they are like, they're poor. You're going to earn your own dollar. Okay. We give you a nice home, but we're not handing you anything. And that's been a very big thing. And I was kind of comfortable with that because I liked to do different jobs. I was really good at selling raffle tickets when I was in middle school. So ultimately, my parents didn't know why I didn't really like school. I really hated it. If I wanted to do well, I could. I did a lot of testing. They said your IQ's through the roof, but I had this ADHD, and then they were really trying to push me into the Ivy League direction, and really trying to do everything they can to get me in that direction. So took the right testing and got into a school called Loyola High School. And I'm like, Mom, I hate this school. Okay. It's an all boys Catholic school. Seriously, and she's like, you're going to have to say, I'm like, no, I'm going on strike. I'm going to go every day, but I'm going to get straight Fs. So I literally for a full semester got straight Fs. And she's like, what do we have to do? I go, well, let's negotiate. I'm not going to say here if I'm going to fail out, She's like, well, and then the principal goes, we can still keep you here. I'm like, and then we ultimately came to a resolution that I go to a co-ed Catholic school. I wanted to go public. They're fun, So a lot of stuff going on in public schools that more meet the type of mindset I was. I ended up going to a school called Towson Catholic, very fascinating school, very small. Carmelo Anthony went there. It's 50% white, 50% black. I had an Olympian in my graduating class, only 20 students per class, super small. And I negotiated. I go, I'll get straight A's and B's if you take me there. And I did. And it was a lot easier. And then, and then my mom, she's so funny. She goes, we wanted to go to a college close by. And so she was one of those moms that would pay the college to get me in. You know what I'm saying? She's like, there's this program you do and we pay for it. And then if they like you, we could get you into Loyola even after those Fs. And I would go there. I just don't feel comfortable with this. So I always had a moral compass, and I always had a little bit of a war with my mom because I kind of felt like she had a level of, she's not a bad person, but she had a level of corruption to her. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this. In fact, I'd rather go to the public university close by, Towson, and I could get in there, no problem. Let's do that. Why are you paying for this extra program to get me into college? I probably don't even want to go to. And I did want to go to a local college for a couple of reasons. By the time I was entering college, I was really big into training and working out. So I had like 3 gym memberships. I was on a very strict diet that was very expensive. My parents loved to travel, so I always had the house to myself, which is cool. So I had gatherings, no problem. It was great to do that. When you're in college, you bring people to this beautiful spot. It's a good spot. And then there's a bigger reason though. My sister, she was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, like towards my senior year, and she had about another year or two. We never knew. It was like she could die any day. So I go, that's why we really wanted to choose a school that on their home while she was sick.
Do you think you got that business mindset and entrepreneurial mindset from your dad?
Yeah, so I got components of my dad. So my dad's very likable. He's, he's just a friendly, cool guy. And then I did get the business acumen from him. But then I got really firm traits of my mother as well. Like I'm in the legal world, but I'm not a lawyer. I got accepted to law school, but that's not me. But we have very, very similar characteristics to both parents.
Walk us through that time period of your sister getting sick and that first year of college for you.
Well, I mean, she got sick, I believe it was my junior year, the end of junior year. And they said that she could die today or she could die in a year. And she ended up living for about 3 years. And so that was that first year. You don't know what's going to happen. We put her on so many. One of the blessings of my family at that point is they had the money to do all kinds of experimental treatments. And she was obviously here at Sloan Kettering. She was all over, and I honestly have to say, I think the experimental treatments were the secret to her living as long as she did. But she had a type of cancer that most kids get. They were much, much younger than her. She was 12 when she got it. Most kids get it when they're like 3, 4, 5, or 6. And they usually don't last that long or live that long. She lived 3+ years. So that was tough, I still I got through it, but I would just be posted up. I mean, a lot of her treatments were at Johns Hopkins. That's why we wanted to stay there. And I would spend spending the night there at Johns Hopkins through college. So
you had to travel back a lot?
Well, Johns Hopkins is in Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Do they have one in New York?
They have them everywhere.
Oh, okay. That's why
their original location's Baltimore. Mm-hmm. But now they've blossomed everywhere.
So do you think that prevented you from maybe partying on the weekends or doing any type of activity?
I still partied. Yeah. I enjoyed an active social life.
Even with her being sick, you still had that kind of ability to still have fun?
Oh, I mean, I didn't allow it to affect me that way for whatever reason. In fact, I think the partying was a way of dealing with it.
Once she passed, how did that alter your life?
It altered my life. Well, it altered everything. When she passed, the entire family dynamic broke. So, let's go backtrack a little bit because we didn't really get too much into something else. So in high school, I was a martial artist, okay? But I remember being a martial artist, and I remember also being a street fighter. And the reason I did the street fighting is because I was winning all my tournaments, and I didn't really flaunt it too much, but I really always asked myself, how effective is my martial arts on the streets? And I remember a bunch of people, students I was in school with, we went and we would get into bars when we were 16, 17 at Towson, the university. I enjoyed the fact that I already knew that university. I was already going to bars there. And I remember a group of my students, they were in college and they literally got their asses handed to them in a street fight. I'm like, well, how effective is this? So I ultimately just started a direction in high school about the time my sister was getting sick, but where I would we would put together organized street fights. And there's no age bracket in street fights in high school, and there's no weight brackets. These are street fights, bare knuckle. And then when I was younger in high school, I would win like half of them, but I would always continue. But my martial art tournaments, I win every time. And then I go, what is this? Most of the kids I'm losing to are like 2 years older than me. That's a lot of weight when you're in high school, in terms of size, differentiation. And then I just said I need to just focus on training. So I'm going to do martial arts, do my tournaments, and I'm going to work out nonstop, And when I say it, we should have gotten in a lot of trouble because we were just Baltimore. The other thing you have to understand about Baltimore is it's a brawling town in the high school and junior. And I'm sorry, when you get into like all the bars are brawl. It's a brawling city. It's normal violence. So like you get into fights in high school, you don't get in trouble. It's considered normalized back then. By the time I was in college, I had what I'd like to also about Baltimore is I had two groups of friends. Okay. So I started building out I always had my bar friends. There's different communities through Baltimore. There's like 4 bar towns of Baltimore. So I love to go out and socialize with that group. And these are town people. They have jobs. They don't go to school. Okay. And that's like the core people I like that. Then I have my new college friends. So I like the dynamic of going, hey, one night I'm going to be with the college kids. Next night I'm going to hit I'm going to be in the pubs of my buddies locally. Okay. So to let you know, I was very big on having a social life. I enjoy in fact, and I didn't drink that much. I would just drink enough to get by. I would drive every night because I would maybe drink 3-4 beers, and that was enough. It was always discipline's part of martial arts. Hey, watch your limit, have what you need. Don't drink and drive. Don't get drunk. Just have a few drinks. And nobody got DUIs if you follow the sign. Don't go through red lights. Don't do something stupid. So I never would get a DUI, and they really weren't giving out DUIs back then anyway. So by the time I got to 18, 19, I'm starting to win all my fights because I started packing so much weight. In fact, I was almost unstoppable when I got to that certain threshold. So we evolved. So almost like you're in high school, you're an amateur, and then you get into the pro and you start learning. Now I want you to kind of put that in the backdrop of who I was, and just I'm not your normal person. Like I really enjoyed the street the street fights. It's a really interesting part. And then somebody that's a street fighter, your type of if you need some type of a therapy, the best therapy is to actually become a bouncer, because now you're stopping the fights. And I would go, what's the bar that has a guaranteed brawl I could stop fights in? And I would find that place, and that would be like a 10-on-10 brawl every night. And it was so fun for me. Now, getting to the dynamic of my sister. So I'm in college, very social life. My sister dies, okay? It was very clear to me during that period of time that my mom and my dad were not doing well, okay? And it was very clear to me that my dad was probably going to move on. And right at that breaking point, my dad left. He's like, I'm out. And it was kind of on his way out. He was, buying some real estate in the Eastern Shore. He built a cigar store. He really wasn't putting any of his time into law anymore. In fact, he was my sister's caretaker for a while. She had to deal with so many medications, and my mom was out there practicing law. So he lost an interest in law and really got more focused on business and real estate, mostly real estate. Then my mom had a meltdown, okay? And then she's like, you got to get out of the house. I go, well, with this whole situation with my sister, like I got another year and a half of school. I was kind of going part-time on schools. She's like, that's your fault. So as I'm going through this, the next week, a whole crew comes into the house. My dad's gone. And secretly, what my mom didn't know is that when I was 19 years old, I'm approaching 21 at this point. So it may have taken her a little bit longer now to think about it. She was sick probably like 3-4 years. So by the time that happened, I'd already met, there's a group that came into Baltimore, and they were selling all the fake IDs to all the local colleges. So this little hub of Baltimore, you got Goucher, you got Towson, you got Notre Dame, you got Loyola, and you have Johns Hopkins. And you got University of Maryland not far from there as well. they were posting up in all the universities selling everybody fake IDs. So these guys were interesting people. So I go, you guys are huge. Like, how did you guys get that big? And they go, you want to learn how to get this big? I go, yeah. They go, okay, follow me. Okay. So they bring me into a room. He's like, read this book, master it. When you want to come back and pick up your ID, then we can talk. And it was called the Steroid Bible. Okay. And I'm like, okay. So I had to come back in 2 weeks to get my fake ID. And I memorized the book. I go, okay, I want to get Decadurable, I want Anadrol, I want this. I gave him a list of things I want to get. And he goes, okay, we're going to give it to you all on the what's called the arm, and then you got to drop off the cash every Friday, to us. I go, I could do that. So I would take a list of the steroids and know exactly what they do, and I would learn how to ingest them myself. I learned Winstrol would get me shredded. Deco made my muscles strong. I knew Dianabol made me a little bit fuller. And then, I just became an expert at these, and I started blowing up. People were like, whoa, what do you want? I go, you want this? I go, I'll get you some Winstrol right now. So I had like 3 gym memberships, and I became like this incredible steroid sales rep. And these guys were, one guy was from the Gambino crime family, and the other guy was from the Del Conte crime family, which is North Jersey Mafia.
And people just came up to you casually?
No, I would push it on. Well, okay. People were seeing that I was getting big. And then, so I'm already kind of a sales guy anyway. Before this, I was selling home improvements. I was a canvasser. Like I'm a natural salesperson. So I was kind of excited about taking these. And then every Friday I would come back with a stack of cash, and they would look at me crazy. They go, wait, we don't really do the steroid thing to make money, but you're bringing us money. I'm like, yeah, I'm bringing in stacks of cash every Friday, on point. So I started building this relationship with these 2 crime figures. And we found out later on why they came in. We could get into that later, but there's a whole history of this that I could get into, which would be fascinating. But I'm ultimately building this relationship with them. And they came in because they knew there was a demand for a lot of their services in Baltimore. In fact, there's been a Gambino crime faction in Baltimore since the 1900s. In the 1990s, which is this period of time, they were dying off. And as they were dying off, the other families kind of saw the need for, bookmaking, loan sharking, steroids, drugs. And what else were they doing? I think that's it. The bookmaking was a big thing for them because it's not like it is today. They had no really internet there. You'd have to call a number, I think, in Costa Rica. They would have that, and they handled all that. So they came in, and there was a huge demand for their illegal services, and they're in there. And I just kind of built this relationship and friendship with these guys. And then I kind of kept it like that, just like the steroid thing. I know they're into all kinds of stuff. In fact, the one guy's name is Freddie Caruso. I can mention his name now. He was just like a wealth of information. I would just sit back and listen to him. Like he was like a criminal analyst and like had a microcosm of information. I'm like, this is a fascinating guy. And then ultimately going back, and I don't mean to be bouncing around, I had this relationship with these guys, okay? And about the same time that my sister died and my dad leaves, my mom, throws me out of the house. A big family comes or a group comes into the home. And she introduces me to this guy that she said, if your father and I didn't get married, this was the man I was going to marry. And his name is Keith. I'm not going to say his last name, but he was a member of the Trafficante family in Tampa. My mom's originally from Tampa. And she would tell me about this for years. Oh, I love this guy. He bought me everything. He's an amazing person. And now they're sitting here in my living room. And my mom's like, listen, I got to get rid of this. We can't live in this house anymore. Your sister died here. I go, I kind of understand that part. I go. And at the same time, the Gambino, his name is Greg, and Freddie Caruso from the Conte crime family. I always say it wrong. The Calva Conte crime family. They're like, dude, we had these new pills. And believe it or not, I still had a lot of structure in my life. So sure, I'll go out. I'll be very social. I'll have a couple of beers. I'll get in fights, but you'd never see me touch a drug. Just wouldn't happen, especially the fact that I'm very big on my fitness, my diet, all that. So I'm like, nah, like I just can't be part of that. And I go, come on, Brian. And then like I'm looking at the Traficante family in my mom's home. I'm getting kicked out. I got 2 years of school. I go, how am I even going to pay for school? You know, like where do I go from here? And then over a period of time, as I'm trying to figure out my next moves, they're like begging me, Bri, come on, meet with us at lunch. So I'm like, no. And I'm finally like, all right, let's have lunch. Okay. I'll take 100 pills or something like that. Okay. So they sit down, they have lunch. They go, here. I go, what is this? Here's 2,000 pills of ecstasy. I've never sold a drug a day in my life. What do you want me to do with these guys? Like Greg, the Gambino guy, he's an associate. He's just like, they're yours. You know, when you get rid of them, just bring us the cash. So I called this one guy I know. His name is Cisco. He's from Chile originally. Only guy I know that sells drugs. Okay. So I call Cisco up and I'm like, Cisco, I got 2,000 pills. And I just upsold it $1. I think they gave it to me like $7 or $8. And he's like, I sold up to him. He's like, I'll get rid of those. I go, okay. 2 hours, he got rid of them. I called Greg. I got the money. He's like, okay, well, we'll re-up you in a couple of days. So give me more. And I'm happy making a quick 2,000. So now I can start paying rent. Now I can maybe pay for school. I mean, it's a lot of money in the mid 90s. So he gives me more. And within a day or two, they're gone. Another 2,000. And before I know it, I'm hitting the streets and I'm still like upset about my sister. And now I'm putting a serious dent in the ecstasy trade. And now there's a hit out for me out of nowhere. So people are like, dude, you just sold what? How many pills of E in like a month? I go, yeah. They go, Tom Dixon, he put a hit out for you. You got somebody, he's going to kill you. I go, why? Why? I never do anything to this Tom guy. So this guy's out to kill me. And I'm just so I'm still kind of numb for my sister. I'm a street fighter, so you're not going to scare me. Like that's so foreign to me that somebody would want to kill me, you know? And Tom Dixon, just so you know, is the character Tom Egan's based on Tom Dixon. So we'll talk about that.
Tommy Egan from Power?
Yes.
Really?
It's loosely about Tom Dixon. Yes.
Wow.
Like again, when you take a character out of Power, you got to formulate it in multiple characters.
I didn't know you were a Power fan.
I'm not.
Oh,
I only watched it a little bit. People told me to watch it. I'm now talking back to a lot of what we call the Lords of Baltimore, and they mapped out why they liked they made that character based on him. But then as it evolved, it's not all Tom Dixon because they went down so many different layers of series. But I'm not a Power fan. I just know it's about him, and it makes perfect sense if you knew Tom Dixon.
We've had a couple cast members on the show.
Okay.
Gianni, who plays Braden, and then Patricia Callenber, who plays Tommy Egan's mom.
Yeah. So like they took a lot of his characteristics, and I really think that Curtis Jackson liked them because Tommy Dixon had gotten shot 6 times and lived, very similar to Curtis Jackson. We could talk about that later. So I get a call, and I get a call from Freddie Caruso. He goes, "We got to do an emergency meeting with you right now." I go, "Why?" He's like, "Somebody wants to kill you." And what Tommy didn't realize is that we're supplying you and we're supplying Tommy. Okay. And we have no problem just supplying you two only, but there's a serious hit out for you right now. So I'm like, all right, let's have a meeting with them. So we have a sit down. And meanwhile, these two mob figures are more concerned about my life than I am. So we sit down and he goes, both of you guys were working with us. I'm supplying both of you guys. You know, Brian works with us because we've known him for the better part of 3 to 4 years. He's worked with us in the Steroid game. We know him. Tommy was brand new, but was introduced to him because he was one of, not the biggest drug lords of Baltimore at that time. He had the money for it. He saw the demand for it. he was jumping in big. Before that, he was only a cocaine dealer. Now he's an ecstasy drug lord as well. So they go, we suggest that we put Brian, you under Tom Dixon. We'll keep the price. I think he kept it at 8.5 for both of you. So Tommy will make a slice on you. You buy so much, he gets a lower price anyway. So you guys are on equal bearing, but Tommy always gets a slice of you, and you're going to get your supply from Tommy. I go, that makes perfect sense to me. In fact, I'm looking at Tommy. I go, you've been in this game way longer than me. I'm brand new. So I can learn a thing or two from you. So I'm a very practical person, I'm like, and it just turned out to work out perfectly. And then at that point, me and Tommy are just inseparable. We're just like, I was working with him now. Now I'm with him. All of a sudden, different people are coming out of the woodwork. They're starting to understand who I am. I'm not somebody that's going to go out there and brag or pretend. I want to be under the radar as much as possible. In fact, I don't want anybody to even know I'm doing this. Sorry, I just need to wake up a little bit. So just this started a new direction in my life with Tommy. And at that point, I knew that I took this position very seriously. Now I was jumping into it. I just got an order out for my order out for my life. I'm working with a faction right here. These mafia guys can't kill me at any point. I know that for a fact. And it was very clear to me that if you make a mistake, you could die. So after and again, this moves so quickly. The numbness on my sister kind of wore off. I started kind of understanding the severity of what I'm getting into. And this is no game at this point. And it was great. I had this really good God sense come to me. Like Tommy was a great mentor. He taught me so many different codes, and we could get into the codes later, but he taught me, really how to be careful. He actually taught me a lot about law. And if we are careful as we are, it's not going to be us getting busted with pills. It's going to be us getting busted with conspiracy. Now, conspiracy, what is that? Basically, it's RICO for drug lords. All you got to need is a group of people to testify against you. You don't have to have any drugs on you, and you can get prosecuted, especially on a federal level. So we were operating on such a large level. We're above the state level at this point, okay? And it just made it very clear to me that if I'm going to take this position, I'm going to be absolutely laser focused on it. And I had a guy, Eric, that worked under the local Gambino faction there that was just separate from these guys I was working with. Again, you have two people that came in, one from Staten Island, one from North Jersey, okay? They still had almost all the faction of the Gambino family. It was the Vincent Magliano. Vincent Magliano was pretty much the last one that was left in Baltimore that was from Baltimore. And he had mentored this guy, Eric, and Eric had been a child drug dealer since he was 12. Now he's in his early 20s. He just gave me a lot of good ethics rules. Hey, if I introduce you to this guy, make sure I get a piece of that business, okay? I go, that makes perfect sense. I like that. I like the ethics and integrity behind that. And then I just started understanding how serious it is when the feds do come in, that your phone can be tapped. And I just started, over the time of working with Tommy, I grew into a bigger, I wouldn't say known. I tried to do everything I can to be, but I was supplying, a good part of the city at this point and was growing.
What happened to the steroid business? Did you put
the steroid business was still going, but I got to a certain point where I was only buying when you got into this point, steroids never made me a lot of money. It was more fun for me. It was more extra money, and it was more a way for me to understand what I can do to better my body. Okay. So I really started putting that business down and putting it aside and just buying it what I needed for myself. And the reason being is because it became too much of a distraction for this new venture.
Now, did Cisco always move your drugs, or did you have to move up to a bigger hierarchy?
Yeah, so Cisco was my guy for probably the first 2-3 months, okay? And then over time, the natural leaders, drug lords of Baltimore start finding you, and you start equating yourself with them. So at that point, you have really two main drug lords. You have Vincent Magliano from the local faction of the Gambino family of Baltimore, and you have Tommy Dixon, okay? Those guys were what they would call at that point the lords of Baltimore, okay? Now you have an evolution of new lords starting to come in. You have me coming in. And if you really look at, I'm a product of the mafia, and I'm a product of a lack of mafia in Baltimore. And we'll get into what I mean by that, but I'm a product of the mafia because of the groups that I work with, just starting out with a fake ID when I was 19. Okay. And then it evolved to steroids. And now it evolved to me being an ecstasy drug lord. But the lack of mafia and their rules allowed me the expansion to kind of implement my own codes. So as I'm getting mentored, I started really looking into the codes of the mafia and go, how can I improve on this? Okay. You know, I'm learning a lot from Tommy. I'm learning a lot from Eric, but I really want to take on, if I'm going to take on this, and Eric would always get in my ear. He's like, Brian, just remember this. It's such a best thing he taught me. He goes, you're one mistake away from prison or death. You're just one mistake away. He's like, you cannot allow, you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. You have to be extra careful. You make one mistake with the mafia, they could kill you. You make one fatal flaw, and then all of a sudden you go to prison. So I had to make serious decisions for my safety and my freedom. And the first decision I made is that all my friends that I was friends with, they're no longer my friends. Okay? Why would I make a decision like that? I made that decision because I knew I had to change who I was at that point. I reached a threshold. I go, I'm not the same person today that I was just months before. So the relationship I have with those friends can no longer continue. I'm starting to build these alliances with these groups. Now I'm meeting, Sharier. He's basically a Persian drug lord out of, he's from Baltimore, but he's supplying DC. Now he's my best friend. Now these are the people that are now in my life. Drug lords are now in my life, and good mentors as well. And as I took this role, I really started studying law. I went in, I remember still helping my mom's law firm out here and there. So before I even got into this game, I never even told you this, but I was doing an assessment of how much of a problem or how risky was this. And if you look at like our Omerta and you look at the rules of the mafia, they're like, you can't talk to cops. Okay. You can't be associated with this. You have to understand, I grew up in a law firm. I'm talking to cops all the time. So I forgot to mention this. While I'm going down this path and learning it, trying to make the right steps as I'm proceeding, I'm talking to cops and I'm making a full assessment about priorities. I go, what's your prioritization right now? Okay. What do you mean? Okay. Well, what are you guys focusing on? Well, we're focusing on heroin. We have an epidemic on that. Baltimore has huge killings right now. We're always in the top 3 murder capital of the world. We're focused on that. We're focusing on crack. What do you think about ecstasy? Ecstasy? No. Okay, it just popped up on my radar. What do you know about it? He's like, if somebody's got ecstasy at this point, we just make them stomp it out on the ground. That's not on our priority list. So what I learned from that is to understand your landscape. Okay, so I know where the priority of law enforcement is. So that's a good thing. Now, the other thing is when you're a drug lord, you have to use violence or use huge intimidation tactics to ensure that you get paid your money, especially if you're now putting drugs out on the street. So I learned the steroids help get me bigger and more intimidating looking. Okay. And I completely shifted my demeanor with people. And I was all business at this point. I took this role as I'm not going to miss a step. I'm not going to miss a beat. I'm going to be constantly on point. And then at the same time, my mentors are like, listen, Brian, once you evolve the way that you're doing, here's what I suggest you do. This is what I do. You got to move every 3 months. I go, every 3 months? I go, every 3 months. You have to be one step above the game or ahead of the police. They can't know where you live. I go, okay, it's another rule I'm going to add on to this. What are more rules? You can't have friends over your home ever again. In fact, you can't tell anybody where you live. Another one right there. So as I'm growing, and we look at the situation where you said, like, I have, I told you I don't talk to my friends anymore. The more I go out is like, I see it as now my office. So what happened during this period of time is Ecstasy became a booming industry, started growing. There weren't bars there anymore. There were clubs. And all the clubs had dance music. It was a thriving industry. And I, in fact, enjoyed the music and going out and watching my product at work. We'd go out and say, okay, we're supplying here, boom, boom. We go to one club after the next to the next. And a lot of times we would see, the different dealers under us, the work that they're doing. And we weren't talking to them. We're just watching. The clubs are also a great place for me and Tommy to talk. So as I got acquainted with the mafia, those guys like to go to social clubs and run their mouths. And the more I got acquainted with the mafia, the more I realized that the certain things that they're doing, they were making big mistakes. I go, I'm not going to blab my mouth, okay? And in fact, I'm going to limit my exposure to the mafia, and they actually respected me for it, meaning I don't see this as a friendship with these guys anymore. This is all business, okay? So when they try to bring me in and go, hey, Brian, we're going to go to Temps and the Jersey Shore, go with us? I respectfully decline. Sorry, guys, I can't go. Okay. And the reason I did that is because one of the things my mom always taught me is you don't let anybody ever see you bleed. And I took that to heart with this, meaning if you're friends, you have these open conversations, you joke, you tease, that could be used against you later on. And by really being militant with this, as militant as I can, it allowed me to be more on point, more on top of my game. And they respected me even more for it. So that was another thing I added to this. So as I got deeper in it, I started adding more layers of protection. Me and Tommy, we would go to a club. We would have a woofer right there, and we talk in each other's ear back and forth. And then that was the way we communicate our drop-offs. Only him and I would know about it. We try to limit our exposure as much as we could on the phone. And it got deeper and deeper. I'm talking, so I'm going to let you ask more questions if you want. But
what was going on with college? Did you leave it? Did you continue it?
So that's interesting. So now I'm living two worlds. Now I'm a drug lord and a college student. And I had to remind myself from the day I made this decision, I go, one of the biggest reasons I chose to do this wasn't just because that I was getting kicked out of my home and had no money, but I wanted to pay for my college. And my mom was like, you're done. You're out. You should have finished college. So now I'm paying my own way to college with drug money. The college part of me played a huge benefit because I had my drug lord life and I had my college life. And a college allowed me to be a little bit myself, okay? We talked about my old friends. No, I had new friends. They kind of had a sense of who I was. But I had to have my college. I didn't do great in grades. I mean, many times I'd be in business school going, I'm making so much more than my finance professor is teaching me about finance. Why am I here? And I would have to remind myself, I made a commitment to finish this and I'm going to do it. So college allowed me to do a lot of different things. There's a semester every few months. Allows me to move every 3 to 4 months. So I always move in with another group of college kids. All the bills in our name every 3 to 4 months. Okay. College also allowed me to implement a strategy. I realized that I got to a point where the feds were following me. Okay. I'm like, I stayed at one location too long. They were camped out. I'm like, this is not a game anymore. It's getting more and more serious. So I don't feel comfortable even talking in my home at this point. So I go, unpredictability is your ally. And what I meant by that is At this point, cell phones are brand new and not too many people are on the internet. And I would just go up to a random college kid. I had no idea who he was. He had no idea who I was. I'm on campus and nobody's watching us on campus. I go, you want a cell phone? He goes, yeah. I go, how about this? I'm going to buy you a phone. I'm going to buy myself. And the guy may know me a little bit, but he's just happy to get a phone. He's like, I'll take a phone. Okay. And I did that. Like, I got to a point where I was doing that every 2 months because I was so paranoid about the phone. People were always hitting me up. I try to do everything I can. If we had a conversation, let's go to the bar. Let's go to a loud location and talk right there. But sometimes you got to have that call. There's something going on. You got to take that call. And the phone served as a huge thing for me because a lot of times people, when you get to that level, people want to help you. You know, they would go, okay, Brian, just so you know, what's his face got busted? Baltimore. Everybody knows each other. So I always get the warning signs. And then afterwards, I get the call where the guy's trying to do a control buy on me. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just busy at school. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. Have a good day. You know? So the control buys were attempts on me. And I would just kind of take a mental note of each person because I'm not thinking on a state level. I'm thinking on a federal level. I'm thinking how many people are they going to get to testify against me maybe at a later date?
So you were still always moving the product yourself? Like you would pick it up, exchange the money, bring it to another person who would then sell it?
Yeah. So I got to a certain point where I realized that all new relationships were a liability. So I wanted to limit my exposure as much as possible. Let me give you an example. It got more and more serious that if somebody were to come up to me, I'm not being paranoid that you're a cop, but any of your mistakes and I don't know you or trying to get to know me, if you come up to me and shake my hand, I'll just give you a dead stare. I'm like, what do you want? You know, it was more of a protection thing. And I got to a point for about a year where I just started designing my own team. And, you know, the mafia, they're in it for the long run. They're in there for their family. This is a lifelong commitment. And I made it very clear that I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to get in, get my degree, and get out. And I wanted to make sure that I would have and bring on a team that met the same criteria and standards that I had. So I would going to clubs and going to bars almost every night allowed me to assess the environment. Now I was known to just sit back and be assessing. I would sit back and watch. And you had to meet a certain criteria. Your criteria had to be a size. You had to kind of dominate when you look in. You had to have an intimidating look. Tommy's crew always were kind of savage looking, big muscle, scary looking guys. And he would be able to pick out the ones that were intelligent enough to be in the game. And then the rest of them were just savages that will destroy you in a second if you look at them wrong. For me, believe it or not, my top people were guys just graduated college. Okay. They're looking for a job. Okay. A lot of them, like one of my top guys, we'll call him Reacher. You ever watch the show Reacher?
Yeah, I love that show.
He looks just like him. That's why we're going to call him that. I'm going to give you his real name. Okay. So Reacher, and I bounced together and he played football for Boston College. They were doing a movie, called Training. No, it's Training. No, it's called The Replacements in Baltimore. So he's working behind the scenes on that, doing a lot of action moves for the movie. And he's like, he might go pro. So he's in between college graduate. He's 6'4". He's 275 pounds. He's an academic, smart as hell. Walked on the football team at Boston College, might go pro. It took me about a year before I decided to bring him in. But he wanted to be next to me for a period of time. He was my driver for the longest time. He'd just drive around with Reacher, and he would drive, and you just see this Goliath next to me, you know. And I'm a big guy, regardless. He towers me. So over time, I go, he's going to get in, okay. And then, so I would watch and see the different components. You know, if you still meet the criteria, you might be somebody I could send money to New York for. You know, you'll just be a courier, and that's it. The second one. We'll call him the Croatian. The Croatian now works for the CIA today. He does. He's one of my top students. The Croatian, I love that he was silent. Couldn't pull anything out of his mouth. Okay. He had this huge jaw. He had chiseled, he had just graduated from University of Maryland, and they were coachable. So if I tell you to do something, you would do it. And the key thing with my team is they already have innate integrity. Integrity was a huge thing for me. Okay. It means everything in this game. You could trust them. They have integrity. And the other key component is they're not in it for the long run. The other part is they never expected to be a drug dealer or a drug lord. Some of these guys became drug lords later. And it's all designed to get in and get out unscathed. So the Croatian, he was incredibly disciplined. He listened to me. And I remember so I would always be on the scout for a new team. And I remember I was getting bigger. This one Italian guy came up to me. He's like, Brian, I want to be as big as you. I go, honestly, I could get you way bigger. And I go, you have the structure to do that. Let's do that. Let's turn you into a Rambo, which I basically did. I call him my Rambo. I'm going to turn you into a machine. Okay. And you're going to supersede me. I know you are. Today, you're like 300 pounds. So as I'm mentoring him, and it was fun to mentor guys, he goes, Brian, I'm Italian and you work with this crew. Why am I not in? And I go, I'll keep his first name. I go, Mike, you're never going to be in. I go, why? I go, you meet all the qualifications for the Italian mafia. They'll probably take you on. I agree. I think they will, but you'll never be part of my crew. He goes, what did I do? I go, the first week I dated my girlfriend, you tried to hit on her. You lack integrity. And for that purpose, you'll never be part. I'll build you into Rambo. You can hang with us. Okay. That's fine. You can hang with us. You want to be with us. And I done what I could for you, but you're not going to be in that crew. And the point behind that is that it didn't matter what race you are. If you actually look at the mafia, it's racist. You can only be Italian. You can be associate, not be in. I looked at it for qualifications that I'm looking for. And if you really find those innate qualifications, you're not only going to protect them, but you protect yourself ultimately. So yeah, over time, now I got my crew, okay, building with Tommy. We're basically being inseparable. And then you have Vincent Magliano. We call him the last Gambino. He's the last one really made man in Baltimore. Then we have Shariar. His sister's a big artist now named Shab. Shariar, he's originally from Baltimore. He's now part of what we call the Lords of Baltimore. He's in our crew. And then we brought on a Russian. I'll talk about the Russian in a second. But the key ingredient with this, of when you're a drug lord, a lot of people think by being a drug lord, like the cartels are fighting each other. I was a big proponent that we work together. And when you did that, when you worked together, we all took care of each other. If I needed something, Scotty had it. He was able to really take over DC and Virginia. And then for a time, I'm supplying Scotty. Here's Shariar, the Persian Mafia. Now he's the head of the Persian Mafia. Was the Persian Mafia scary? No, they were so much fun. They're incredibly intelligent. The families had tons of money. They owned so many restaurants and clubs. So the product can fly so much deep into DC, into the clubs and that club scene there. So he was an incredible drug lord. Was he scary? No. He had to have huge security in order for him to get to the level he had to do because he was a short, little, small Persian guy. And then ultimately the fifth one was Mikkel. And Mikkel was just a guy that I was mentoring. I always was trying to bring on new talent. Always trying to find the next person that I was going to bring under me. And I didn't want to be in the game too long, but I go, he's got the dead stare. I like this about him. The dead stare is good because it's just an intimidating look. He doesn't talk much. He's smart. And I go, I'm not going to bring him under me. I go, and I had a meeting with him. I go, I got an idea for you. Your new nickname's Russian Mike. He goes, okay. Well, he is Russian. Okay. He's actually a Ukrainian Jew. But I go, one thing about Baltimore is they're very much removed from modern day society back then. That's why there really weren't any big deal, like drug, like outside. It's hard to explain. for me to have this contact in New York was a big deal because a lot of people that live in Baltimore don't leave Baltimore. There are generations in that city. Leaving it was just not an option. They just stay. That's all they do. And a lot of people that we're dealing with, they live in what's called white hoods. You have white hoods throughout Baltimore. Very poor communities of white people as well. They just never even thought about leaving Baltimore. It's all they know. It's all they cared about knowing. And I go, a lot of people in Baltimore don't know much about Russians, and a lot of people in Baltimore are intimidated. And I know you have a big crew that live in the Pikesville area. I want you to build your own faction, Mike. And he did it. And he built what would be perceived as like a Russian mafia in Baltimore. And I go, he did it. Like, I go, wow, I actually is the one who founded the Russian mafia in Baltimore. I'm saying it as a joke, obviously. But what was great about Mike is Mike was also somebody that I wouldn't bring in, but I was supplying him, and he was doing well getting rid of pills. So we had this intricate group where if we needed something, Mike would also had his own sources. He would supply me as well.
When you were thinking of your exit, did you have a specific dollar amount in mind, or was it just to get through school?
The goal was to just finish up school. Maybe not be there's a ton of wisdom I have in this. And I have to think back to 25 years, but the one mentor I told you about, his name was Eric, that was under Vincent Magliano. He's like, you know what like an old soul is? Somebody's just an old soul. It's something about them that just has a lot of wisdom, even at a young age. And he would go, Brian, I want you to look at this guy. And we'd be at a bar. And I go, okay. I go, see that guy? That guy, all he knows is selling drugs, okay? He would sell a bunch of cocaine, he'd sell keys, he would get busted, and then he would do it again. The guy never took the time to learn another business. He just knows drug dealing. He's stuck in that cycle. That guy is stuck, and he's going to go back to prison time and time again. Don't be that guy, okay? So I just knew. And he would talk about it. We would talk about it on a legal part with like Tommy. He's like, once you get busted, first thing is he goes, if you ever get busted, you never talk to me again. Okay. The qualities of Tommy, he had a lot of integrity as well. He's like, I'm not going to be the mafia. Okay. The mafia is going to go, I'm going to buy you, I'm going to pay for your attorney. They have another end game for when they do that. Okay. They want to control the situation by paying for your attorney. You just never talk to me again. You're done. And that's it. We don't know each other. Maybe in 20 years we could talk, but that's that. So it became very clear that there's an expiration date on this industry. And it didn't matter. And that's why I added so many layers of protection with my crew and everybody else, that it's just inevitable, no matter how long you stand the game, that you're going to get caught. So yeah, it was pretty much as close to college, after college, as I can get out. I didn't have a specific number in mind. No.
Tell us about the financial aspect of it. How much money were you making and what were you doing with it? Because obviously you were making way more than what the cost of college was. Yeah.
So it's a couple of things they teach you to do. The college thing was really good because it allowed me to keep two worlds separate. Okay. And you look kind of young. I look young. So like if a Fed's going to be on campus, it's going to look weird. Okay. So I had this group, and like I told you, I was really good at using college kids or working with college kids to get a new place to stay, getting brand new phones. I would just get new phones, break it, new phone, break it, And then the other one would be to get storage units. And that was a little harder because you had to find a college student that was going to move, go in, hey, I'll pay for your storage unit. So what was your original question?
The financial aspect of it.
So what I learned to do is I put everybody on a strict schedule. Okay. So if I have a guy or one of my I call them students working under me, I always supply them on Thursday. Okay. So Thursday, I tell them, even I got to a certain point where I'm paying for all the pills, but I just bring up the illusion that I'm still working with the mafia entirely, meaning it's their pills as well. It puts added pressure on them because they know that the people I work for are murderers. It is what it is. So you don't want to make a mistake with them. So I give it to them Thursday and I would verify, how much do you need? Okay, I need 2,000. I need 3,000 pills. Okay, here's your price point. You must give it to me the money by Sunday. Okay. The good thing about a club drug like ecstasy, it's not an addictive drug. You're basically getting into the clubs on Thursday, supplying all the clubs till Sunday. You get your money and that's it. My dealers aren't getting calls from, people who are addicted that want pills on a Monday. It just doesn't happen. It's a club drug. Okay. So when you get people on a consistent weekly cycle like that, you have a system in place. Okay. And I want to get those pills in their hands, out of my hands as quickly as possible. The key for me is to get it out as quickly as possible. Now, I'm not a greedy person. So I just upsell the pill maybe 50 cents, maybe $1. When you're selling hundreds, you make maybe $2-3 on each pill. On 1,000, you maybe upsell at 50 cents, maybe upsell maybe $1, And in all honesty, I think I in many ways knew, I was always grateful to even have this money, to tell you the truth. So I wasn't like even trying. I was very grateful for that. And so when I get a storage unit, if I had to keep drugs in one storage unit, I would keep it separate from the money. And then all I was doing is banking money. One of my things, I was like, I'm not going to be flagrant. I'm not going to drive a flashy car. I'm not going to wear flashy clothes. I did have certain rules. This is going to be a funny one, of what I wanted my people to wear. We had to kind of keep a certain image in place. So I felt like it was important to be somewhat dressy, make yourself, be a stand-up guy, look good, look presentable, hold your head up high, but we're not going to wear suits. We had a specific type of clothing we wear. We wear nice slacks, had to be long legged because all my guys are also fighters. So you got to be ready to fight. You got to be able to kick them if you have to. You have nice dress shoes because it has to have a rubber sole under there so you could grab the concrete if you get in a fight. One thing that was beautiful about Baltimore in terms of what I did is I'm a former street fighter. So I already knew the landscape of Baltimore. I already did an assessment of the priorities of the police. I already did specific calculations. I know when you're a street fighter, it's a brawling town. It's what we call like a roadhouse town back then. There's no cameras back then. You get in fights, cops just break it up till you go home every time. So by being an ecstasy drug lord and going out, and if you have on occasion somebody owes you money, I don't carry drugs with me, but I'm going to approach him immediately. If he doesn't have my money, I'm going to beat him up. And what's good about that is I have an audience that's watching me beat your ass. So it's very clear what happens if you pay me. And I wouldn't have to do that often, but I had calculated enough to know that I'm not going to get in trouble if I can make this look like a bar fight.
So if you had to put a dollar amount on everything, what would that be for how much money you'd raked in?
Well, ultimately, feds did come in and they stole a bunch of my money. We'll get into that in a second. But no, I wasn't a millionaire. I'd say about $600,000 to $700,000 total.
So they would still label you as a drug lord, even making that little money in the scheme
of things? It's a lot of money
things?
back then.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was still classified that. And I think a lot of people thought, I'm being honest, a lot of people thought I had a lot more money than that. Tommy was probably a millionaire. Vinny definitely. Scotty had an opportunity to, but he spends so much money. It's just his thing. I didn't spend it. Mikhail, I never knew how much he made, but a lot of people thought, but ultimately, I'm just gonna be honest with you, I didn't make. The reason why I didn't make that much is because I would literally lower my margin sometimes to a quarter per 1,000 just to be kind of one of the best in terms of numbers out on the street. So I would look even bigger than I am because most of the city has my drugs, but I'm making sliver profit margins on it.
What did your parents think you were doing? Like, were you in contact or was the relationship just really strained and they didn't really stay in touch with you?
So my dad, I stopped talking to almost entirely when he left. Mom, here and there. And my mom would be, it would be so weird because, my mom would have a party, and it is strained, but she's like, come over. I have a penthouse over here. She wanted to live her single life, at that point. And she was like kind of a socialite, getting back into being a socialite. So I remember I would go out to her penthouse and it would be the mayor of Baltimore. And it would be NBC producer. It would be, one of the senators from, I can't remember their names, but it'd be Martin O'Malley was the mayor at that point. And it'll be all these kind of socialite Baltimore types. And it'll be like so ironic because I'm taking pictures with them. Okay. And I'm, hey, with this. And I'm like, I can't wait to get back to the streets. Like, it's like they're calling me, like, get me out of here, and I would go and do these pictures with these socialites. And literally 1 hour later, I'd be right down the street in a brawl, like cracking somebody's head for owing me money. But it was a very odd dynamic. My relationship with my mom was certainly not where it should be. We would talk here and there, and that would be it.
How long did this whole run last for you? So
it started the run. Let's get into this. This is a good story. So you used to kind of do parties and events, right?
No, I'm long gone from
that. But you did that, right?
Yeah, I did do that. Yeah.
So while I'm a drug lord, I met some of the guys I was in college with were doing really well with renting out clubs in Baltimore. And, what they would do is, I like the deal. You get all the door, usually, convince the club to give you free draft beer for like an hour or two. And then if you're lucky, you get a percentage of the bar. Probably not. Okay. Most of your money you're going to make at the door. I watched the business model. I liked it. And at this point, I'm dating one of the cute, beautiful girls on campus. Her friends are the hottest as well. And I go, I'm going to replicate this business model. So I would send her and her girlfriends out the campus in Towson. And I go, I just want you to invite everybody. I don't care how nerdy the guy is. You're inviting all the nerds. Everybody's invited, okay? And we would rent out buses. And the good thing about what the position I'm in is I know all the club owners. So I know they even have the club owners tend to be some type of mafia person. So Chris McKinney, we would call him the head of the Velvet Mafia, owned a club. So one night I do the club there, okay? Next night, I would do Johnny G. He owns a China Room. I do a club there, and we make a lot of money. This was like my side hustle, and it was my way of getting out of the industry. Ultimately, like, hey, I can make some legitimate money and ultimately get out and learn something. When I do get out, I got a legitimate business I'm working on. Okay, or if something goes awry, I'll do that. One of the other parts of my code, and again, I got to put this in a book, but like omerta is like, don't cheat or don't hit on another made man's wife. Okay. My code with all my guys is get a good girl and stick with her. We're in college. Okay. We're not getting married, but you get a good girl. Okay. Stick with her and you don't cheat. Okay. And the reason you do that keeps you grounded. You're not even thinking about hooking up with somebody else's girl. You just got a good girl and there's no toxic relationship there. She's loyal to you. You're loyal to her. It's a good thing to have. Okay. And my code was always don't cheat on your girl. Okay. So as I'm having these events, girls are trying to kind of throw themselves at me at certain points. And I'm like, no, I got a girlfriend. Okay. So one night we got a club going at China Room. Place is packed. My girlfriend gets drunk and she screams at me. She creates drama. And like when you're a drug lord, you can't have any drama in public. You can't. So I just sit there and let her do her thing, yell, punch me if she wants. That's great. She leaves with her girlfriends and that's that. So I'm a little upset by it. And then this girl's just throwing herself at me. I'm like, I can't do that. It's a very big violation. I know not to do that. Ultimately, at the end of the night, I invite her back and she comes to my place. We do our thing. And then she's like, my friend's just going to pick me up. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So now I violated two codes. A, I allowed somebody to know where I live and I cheated on my girlfriend. So I'm at my place and I get a call about an hour or two later. They go, Brian, that guy, Billy, that picked up that girl, he ends up being a cocaine dealer. Okay. He's getting busted right now. Watch yourself. So I'm like, okay, I'll watch myself. So I don't have drugs on me. It's like Saturday at this point. So the drugs are already on the street. I do have a huge facility of a lot of money. Okay. So I'm there, man. I'm always prepared. So like, remember, I have a legal background. So I've already studied, search warrants and what the criteria will be for a search warrant. So I'm prepared. You'll never find drugs at my home, ever. You're not going to find money at my home, maybe just a little money I need. So I'm like, I'm pretty much square. I'm okay. Okay. Got the knock on the door. It was the feds. They came in. They pretended like, oh, is this your car? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, and they put us all in handcuffs. And I'm sitting there going, I want to see your search warrant. And they got so upset with me. They're like, what? I'm like, there's no way you got a legitimate search warrant. I want to see it. And they wouldn't show it to me. And it's just me against 20 guys. What I always did is I put my calculations. I took accounting classes. So all my numbers are built deep into my accounting homework on my computer. So I wouldn't find that. And it was a square off for about 10 hours. They were so confused why there were no drugs. They never met like a dealer or a drug lord like me where you don't have drugs at your home. You don't have guns at your home. Like, what are you? Like you have to have drugs here. No, I don't. And I knew that I had a storage facility with a good little amount of my cash. It was like $400,000. And I knew to put it in my computer. I forgot to do that. And they found the card and they found the location. They go, what is that? And I already know they're on their way there. I go, it's a lot of money. It's my money. It's in somebody else's name. So it's not that person's money. So whatever you want to do, don't get that guy on it. It's my money. I'm thinking, fuck, these guys might be able to get a conspiracy case on me. They go, okay, what's the next steps? He goes, we found out who your mom is. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get a warrant for that storage and let's meet tomorrow. I go, fuck. So I have to call my mom. I go, Mom, I don't know what's going to happen here, but they just found $300,000 to $400,000 of my money. Okay. What the hell's going on, Brian? We could talk in person and we end up having a meeting at the federal prosecutor's office. And my mom is Baltimore, Smaltimore. In the legal world, everybody knows each other too. All the legal people do it. And she just was doing everything she can to make this go away. And she's like, Brian, you let them keep that money, And I'm like, I'm kind of okay with that. So we this shows you how corrupt Baltimore is. And this was always my issue with my mom, is that I kind of saw an opportunity when I did get into this to add some integrity into criminality. And it just showed you how quickly she was able to make this go away. And these guys, they told me they're going to do this. They claimed 100,000. So I got a piece from the DA for 100 and they kept about 300,000 for themselves. Wow. Now that sounds crazy, but these guys are already arrested for doing the same shit. They did a movie called We Own the City. City. Yeah. So one of the guys got arrested was one of those guys.
Really?
Yes.
I had someone that was one of the drug lords in Baltimore that got wrapped up in it. His brother worked for one of them or something like that. So one of his name is Gladstone. I'll mention his name because he's already been arrested and whatever. But so we put a deal together and the deal got better. It almost was too good to be. They go, Brian, when do you graduate? I go, about 1.5 years. They go, we could stay off you for 1.5 years, okay? But we're getting Tommy Dixon. We've been trying to get him for 15 years. So you can't do work with Tommy Dixon. This is the first time I've ever told anybody this, just so you know, okay? I go, okay. They go, you could continue to work. I go, I could continue to what? They go, yeah, you just can't work with Tommy Dixon. And I go, what else? And they go, we want you to be done by the time that you graduate. If you finish by then, I could do my part to keep anybody off of you. But after you graduate, you're fair game. If you're in the game afterwards, we're going to come for you. I go, okay. Sounds too good to be true. I don't believe it, but okay. Then I go, what about the rat? I know who the rat is. They go, you could beat him up. I go, what? They go, we know you don't use guns. Okay. We know your reputation, but you're allowed to beat him up. Now I'm like, this is way too good to be true. These guys are corrupt. They did take my money. And now the deal was made.
They let me go, and that was that, okay?
And this was the FBI telling you this.
This is the DEA. Here's what's different about this, okay? It's a DEA task force, okay, that was made up of Baltimore corrupt police and the local DEA.
Okay.
So it wasn't the FBI. The fact that these guys are local guys and corrupt cops, one of them, the one I talked to, is in jail or went to jail, got out, is the reason why that deal. And it's the reason why I wouldn't even tell anybody for the longest time. Because, hey, I'm not going to rat on these guys. They already got in trouble. It's already out there. And it's 25 years later. Okay. So all I did at this point is I go, what are my next moves? So I did two things. I approached the Russians. Okay. I went up to the Russian mic. I go, I can't supply you anymore. He goes, well, Brian, I could supply you. We already have our own suppliers. We're Jewish. If you know anything about Ecstasy, the Israeli mafia really runs it. And I go, we already have a good source, so we could supply you. So boom, that's handled. So then they didn't know any of my students. My students, they don't look like drug dealers. They look like college kids, or big football players. So I go, I'm going to bring on a special operation. There was a guy, Dave, I was working with. Never give you his last name, but he works on Wall Street now. And I just turn him into my next project. And I was so paranoid after this that I would add 10 codes on top of codes on top of codes on him. Like I made his life so miserable while he was making money for me that we just had to be extra careful, like I didn't believe it. And what was great about this whole thing is my drugs were already on the street. So all my money from the drugs that were on the street came back. So I didn't lose everything. I had more money stored away at other locations. So it wasn't a complete loss. And I had about another year or so back in the game. And we continued with another one of my students, and we just were super careful. Now, in terms of beating up the rat, I didn't feel comfortable with that. These guys, you just don't trust them. Plus, they would pop up at random locations. And the rat, I just would go, he's a social kid, he was a college kid. I just point to the door and say, you got to leave, So I did that for about a year. Just get out. I didn't feel like it was a good move. I'm trying to make calculated moves.
So he had put the cops on to you before that guy that picked up the girl from your house even?
He's the same guy.
He's the same guy.
Yeah.
So he had already gave you up?
Yeah, he gave me up.
And he just happened to be the friend of the
girl. Just happened to be. And this is why the codes are built the way they are. Because it's just a weird chance encounter could get you in trouble.
So it wasn't a setup. It's not like the girl approached you.
No, not at all.
Okay. No. It was just a coincidence.
It was an absolute coincidence.
She was friends
He
with
was
the
already
rat.
wanted by the cops even gave me all the information. They were like, they got paid out. So they're going to tell me everything, So like, and it got worse. And then about a matter of time, I'm going, okay, now I'm working with the Russians. Within 3 months, full operation now, still going, trying to, now I'm just focusing on graduating. Much money as I can, graduating, okay? Tommy gets busted, okay? These guys, they're on him, they get him, okay? So now I got this guy Gladstone calling me. He's like, Tommy's trying to set you up. Are you lucky? Whatever. I'm like, okay, Gladstone, thank you. So now we got one drug lord down, okay? I'm still operating. Vinny is another story. Him being a drug lord. It just shows you with Vinny. Vinny is an incredibly talented and amazing entrepreneur today. He owns this company called LifeMed. So shout out to that company. He's always been, he owned a great bail bonds company, but he was always getting caught up, in and out of prison when he was selling, cocaine. He didn't have the level of tenacity that Tommy had. So I pulled a lot of stuff from Tommy. The next drug lord that went down, Shariar, he ends up getting busted. By that time, though, I'm already graduating. I finished my last exam. I ended up going. I go. I'm just going to move to New York. Okay, so I go. I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to become a stockbroker. I just took as much money as I can. I made an agreement with the DEA that I'm not going to be continuing. So what do I do next? Just I got everything ready for New York. Okay. Boom. I'm moving in. I come back to Baltimore. 9/11 happens. So I'm like, I'm already fully committed. While I'm doing that, I didn't tell you this, but I'm taking my last again. When you graduate, I go, I'm going to go out with a bang. Okay. So I call Russian Mike up. I go, I need 40,000 pills. He goes, okay, I'll get them to you right now. Drops them off. I go, I'll be right back. Never returned them with the money. I ripped off the head of the Russian mob at that point. So now I have to leave because I'm going to get killed by them. So, and it broke every principle that I was. And when my team, my students saw that I did that, the level of disappointment in them were like, you did what? Like, what? Like, I go, guys, we're going to lower the numbers. You guys get rid of it fast. I'm out. Okay. This is my last move. And it makes it even worse for the Russians because we're getting rid of it right in front of them on the streets of Baltimore. They know their product's out there. So ultimately, I made my way to New York. After 9/11, kind of fended off. I moved everything back, moved everything into New York. And I just started getting ready to be a stockbroker, and start my new life. So I remember it's just going out when I can. Everything's settled. You start going out. And we typically go to like big kind of ecstasy clubs. Like they had like Sound Factory was big then. And at this point, the guys, the Italians, Tommy Dixon's now trying to testify against them. So it's getting heated now with Tommy and the Italians. And what's beautiful is that them making sure I worked under Tommy, I don't have that connection I used to have with them. So I'm no threat to them. Okay. We don't have that relationship. They're not giving me drugs anymore. I'm getting it from Tommy. We talk once in a while to get updates on certain things. We try to limit those conversations. They're already fully set up in New York and New Jersey mostly. When they came back though, those back to their hometowns, they turned darker than I ever saw them in terms of like they kept on ripping off drug dealers. I would get arguments with them like, what are you guys doing? This is bad karma. Like we make plenty of money. Why would you do that? So I remember I go out to Sound Factory. I see my contact from the associate from the Gambino crime family, Greg. I go, hey, Greg. He goes, Brian. I go, yeah, I need you to come with me. I want to have a meeting with you down this alley or down this hall. I go, what? I go, you're out of your fucking mind. Okay. And the reason I do that is like, shows you ever hear that story where somebody goes, hey, you're one of us, let's take you to. The best thing for me to not be in the mafia is to do what I want to do. And if I have one inclination that you're up to no good or you have bad intentions, I'm not going to follow you down this hallway. You're out of your freaking mind. And I was absolutely right. He attacks me right there. And we, break out, it's a club where they search you for guns. So there's no weapons in there. And we ended up in pretty much like a jiu-jitsu fight, on the ground, and I was studying jiu-jitsu. He's just brutally, he's huge. Just so you know, he probably 30 pounds over me. I'm fighting this guy. We get pulled apart and it was just very clear to me that I can't continue in New York. I'm like, they want a clean house. I'll kind of make it quick. So my Reacher, remember the football guy, he's now doing another football movie in Hollywood. He's like, I'm going to be an actor, Brian. Okay. Reacher, I never told you this. He's like, I'm like kind of graduate. He's like, well, Brian, while you decided to graduate, I've already met the Israeli mafia out here. He's very charismatic, just so you know. Okay. Just like the guy Reacher, just like that. Already met them, already good friends with them. And I went to a party in Indiana. I'm already supplying Indiana. I was like, that's one of my students. Damn, like he's good, I was like, whoa, like I go, okay. He's like, come on in, come on down to LA. And I really had no other choice to go down there. And while I'm in LA, I get a call from Gladstone, the DEA agent. He goes, where are you? I go, I'm in LA. He goes, stay there. We just intercepted a phone call. I go, what? Dude, there's a hit out for you. The Gambino crime and the Cavalcante family want to kill you. I go, okay, thank you. Just stay there. And that's a damning call, just so you know. Because if you understand the power of the mafia back then, way more powerful than it is today. They still have absolute power, but that changed the trajectory of decisions I had to make in my life for the better part of 10 to 15 years. Like I still had to kind of be on top of my game for a while. I had to take that threat very seriously. I had to certain times hire PIs to check up on them, to find out where things are going. While I'm in LA, Tommy's going down. He takes down those associates from those families. He's testifying against them. Charrier, the Persian Mafia, gets busted, and he's down. Vinny's got his own legal problems, and then Russian Mike gets busted. So all the drug lords are out.
Except for you. You survived.
I survived.
Wow.
And now my students are like, we want to get back in. So I call the Croatian up. Now I build this. I go, I want you to come with me, fly out to LA. We're going to meet the Israeli mafia. Okay, so we're going to go meet with them, but we're going to be the way we're going to be. So when we took that sit down, we just stare at them the whole time, analyzing their mannerisms, because in my mind, this is too good to be true. Okay. I've been wanting to get connected with the Israelis forever. I knew that they had the best prices. They were the source of ecstasy. And as I got connected, we ultimately decided that we'll move with them. So now I ended up getting my students in place, and then they ended up taking over.
And you walked into the sunlight?
Yeah, they labeled me the Baron of Baltimore at that point.
The Baron of Baltimore?
Yeah, I'm the Baron, they're the Lords now. And it allowed me to do a few things. Allowed them to take over. At this point, I'm just the finance, okay? I'm the source and the finance. And it made the students have to fly back and forth a lot. We had to mail packages out. We stayed, all the Lords were gone, except now my students are taking over. They're now the new Lords. And we had a good run. The whole time I was working on becoming a mortgage broker. Like, I'm 1 foot in it, just one foot out, knowing that I eventually have to get out. I got enough information to show that the heat was really starting to catch up on them. Even though they're my students, they're not good trainers. They're not good at training new blood. And they had some very close encounters that I got to a point for everybody. I go, hey, we had another year. It's done. Okay. Let's put this done. All of you guys got college degrees. All of you guys never wanted to be drug lords. I didn't want to be a drug lord ever, but we did. And now it's time to move on, and we shut it down.
How old were you when you walked away?
So at this point, I'm probably 26.
Wow. So you've been living those 20 years after that as just a normal citizen? Yeah.
And it was very hard to do because
it's gotta be boring.
Well, that was what I say. I'm now a normal person. What was cool about it is you can start enjoying your life again, because when you have that level of responsibility, it's day and night, it's home. Everything is a job. Everything you're on point nonstop. You can't miss a beat. So for the first time, I got a nice, beautiful place on Sunset Boulevard. I broke up with my girlfriend. I was like, I want to enjoy life. I can start doing coke. Let's do some drugs. I'm not like a drug person, but I'm just letting loose, then that was kind of the normal drug in LA back then. But it was like you just let loose your single life, and I just started working hard at becoming a mortgage broker, and I did very well. And I told the Israelis, I go, hey guys, I'm out. And they were like, they celebrated. They're like, yay, dude, that's great. Like, who does that, And I started working with them on stuff. And I didn't become an actual millionaire until about 5 years later.
Wow.
5 years later, after the mortgage industry, I built a company called Home Rescue Programs. We had a big mortgage meltdown. And I'm still like a kind of nerd at hand. I saw an opportunity in the industry. And before I know it, this drug lord is now being flown to meet with members of Congress to educate them on loss mitigation underwriting guidelines.
Well, they didn't know you were a drug lord.
No, but it's crazy. I'm going back to DC. Like, I was here 5 years ago as a drug lord. Now I'm on Capitol Hill. Like, what is this?
Did you ever think you would be telling the story? Like, you probably thought at that age, because there was no social media, there wasn't any of this.
Dude, I was scared as hell for anybody to know the past.
Yeah.
Of like the type of judgment. Like, now the world's different than it was years ago.
Yeah. So what inspired you to share it?
I think there's been a big shift in transition. When you have Wes Watson, former people like that are now influencers.
He's a tool, man. He's a tool.
We already know that.
I have a lot of patience for
one of my students. One of my lawyers. I have a lawyer. It was a student of his, so I reached out to him just to fuck with him.
Wait, he paid him?
Yeah, I don't.
Oh,
he was it's crazier. He used to be a DA. I'm like, what are you doing? So I reached out to him about that, and he just wanted to blab his mouth. And then I go, Wes, I think your numbers are down. So I'm like, I'm going to be arrogant back to him. He goes, what do you mean? I go, you always ask people to show your bank. I want to look at your bank statement. So I'll play with them back. And then I go, I don't think you're going to be coachable. I go, you're probably right. You don't own any real estate. And I do. I don't know where I'm going to get any feedback from. He doesn't own any real estate. He
rents everything.
Rents everything, yeah.
Which I guess in probably some part, it might be smart because it's all write-offs, right?
It can be.
With influencing and stuff.
Yeah, that's what he's doing is he's using that, I had Bentleys. I sold them all. I'd rather put that money in the real estate. But if you're playing this, image on social media, it's part of the job.
Do you have kids?
No.
Did you want kids or?
No.
Wow. You probably wouldn't be here if you had kids.
Yeah, I don't know. Living in LA, it's just never a place I wanted. I lived in LA for 20 some years. So I just never really wanted to have that kid. I got married eventually. I have a wife for 11 years. So I'm happy with marriage. I don't know. Maybe we might adopt in a year or two, but at this point I'm pretty happy with it. Just I'm built differently.
Did she hear the story before you told her? Or is this the first time she's listening?
She knows most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this would be quite a shock for her.
No, she knows most of it. She's Russian. She could deal with it.
When you meet someone, how far in do you tell someone? Like when you first met her?
I mean, we've been together for 11 years.
Yeah, but when does this come out?
It came in a few years later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things you just kind of don't want to introduce right off as an immediate conversation piece.
You know what's interesting is there's got to be hundreds and thousands of people like you who've just never been caught and that have done what you've done.
I honestly think, well, most of the stories you hear, you might be true. There's probably a lot of drug dealers that don't get caught. I agree with that. But we might do another episode because I reactivated a couple times.
Well, that's what you promote in a book or your own platform that you're building, Yeah,
well, I reactivated, and that what I do now, and we won't get off topic, but just as good I was at legal and criminal strategy. I'm ultimately in the same industry. I'm a legal strategist. My company is Legal Strategy.
And yeah, promote it if you want to plug it in.
Oh yeah. So like after I had that company, we got into suing mortgage banks, for the mortgage meltdown. So I've been suing banks for 15 years. The first 7.5 years we're suing, the big banks, Bank of America, Wells, for the mortgage meltdown. The last 7-8 years, we've been doing credit card banks, specifically banks that are united with, Visa, MasterCard, et cetera. So our clients, the website, I think I said it, but usalawcenter.net. I'm now the full owner of that company. I had a partner. I bought them out about a year ago. Less than that, actually. And our clients aren't late in their credit. They're just basically overwhelmed with debt. They've got over $20,000 in debt. They don't want to go late. They're looking for options. They realize that it may take them, better part of 10, 20 years to pay those payments back. Those minimum payments. That's really all they can afford. So they're looking for a solution, they don't want to go late on their credit. They don't want to file bankruptcy. They don't want debt, relief. They don't want to consolidate it. What we're able to do is we've identified about 12 federal statutes, and we come after the banks and we settle out the debt by eliminating the debt. We literally litigate to full litigation, to full elimination.
Wow. So what do you think is the life lesson you want people to take away from your story today?
There's a lot there, a lot to unpack there. So it's never too late. Like if you started out being a drug dealer when you're young, you could turn into something much greater later on in life. There's a lot more money to be made legitimately than non-legitimately. When you work in the non-legitimate world, you always have this thing kind of hurling over you. You have that extra concern. When you get into the legitimate world, you don't have to deal with that. There's way more money to be made, and it's such a blessing to be able to make money legit. If you do decide to get into the game, know the landscape. That was one of the key things, is understand the landscape of where you're going into the game. I would never get involved in a drug like fentanyl or heroin or crack. That's just not me. Would I've gotten involved with marijuana? No, just because it was too big to deal with. So yeah, I mean, one of the things I never even touched on is that we barely had the internet back then, and I was testing the ecstasy pills for quality. We were, and then there was even a website just jumped on. I mean, internet was brand new back then. It was called Dance Tape, and I think they're still alive. And we would be able to test the drugs. Now, we didn't have the problems that they have today. Nobody was dropping dead with with the components that they have in drugs today. Yeah. But we were doing that for quality back then too. So, if you're going to jump in the game, have some integrity, have some rules, have some codes.
Well, Brian, I appreciate you sharing your story with me today, man.
Of course.
It's been great to connect and sit down with you, and you tell your story so well. I always love when a guest can speak it, so well, and they're excited to share it for the first time.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Safe travels back to Maryland.
Thank you for having me.